All right, everyone. Now, today we'll be talking about business growth. What is meant by the word business growth? In simple words, business growth occurs when the scale of production or operation increases of a business. When the scale of production increases, when the business operates on a larger scale, that's when a business growth takes place. There are various examples of business growth. Let's take an example of McDonald's. Let's take an example of Shell. Let's take an example of Adidas. Let's take an example of Apple. Let's take an example of Samsung. The various examples that we have for business growth. Most of the business aims for business growth. It is one of the business objectives. There are actually two types of growth that we have: internal growth and external growth. So we understand that business can grow internally or can grow externally. So what is meant by the word internal growth? Internal growth has another name: organic growth. This occurs when a business grows within itself. When a business grows within itself, for example, a business starts to expand on its own. So that's when internal growth takes place. There are various reasons and various methods why, and how a business can grow internally. The first method is, for instance, there is an increase in the number of branches. Let's take an example of Subway. The number of branches are increasing. So what would happen in that case? There is a business growth. Then if we have more machineries in the production, so now the business can operate on a larger scale, the operations can be on a larger scale, so that would be business growth. The third method can be more sales. If the business is achieving greater amount of sales, so that means there is business growth. Internally, the business is now growing. There can be one more reason, and this can be growth from local to international market. Sales from local to international market. This can be by exporting it to the other country, or it can be setting up an outlet in the other country, becoming an MNC. That stands for multinational company. So this would create internal business growth. The various advantages that a business can gain when it grows internally. The first advantage can be that it gains benefit of economies of scale. The market share increases. The business operates on a larger scale, so it gains greater market share, greater market dominance. Fourth advantage is that more profits can take place when the business starts to grow on a larger scale. But what can be the disadvantage when the business is growing internally? When the business is growing internally, it can lead to diseconomies of scale. It can create communication problems for the business. It can increase the overheads of the business. The expense would start to increase. It can also lead to a slow method of growth. For example, if a business is growing internally, it is a slow method of growth compared to external growth. So internal growth has various advantages as well as few drawbacks as well. Now if we talk about external growth, external business growth is also known as inorganic growth. What are the methods of external growth? A business can grow externally by integration. Integration is when two or more businesses, they become one. So how can they become one? Either by a merger or by takeover. Merger is considered to be friendly when two businesses happily unite together and they become one. That is merger. But when we talk about takeover is considered to be hostile. This is where one business is resisting and the other business takes it over. That's when a takeover takes place. And if we talk about the further 4/3 categories of integration that we have for external growth: horizontal integration. Vertical integration is divided into two: vertical backward, vertical forward integration. And then we have conglomerate integration. So that makes it, technically there are actually 4/3 methods, because we've got two methods here in vertical growth. So what is meant by horizontal integration? Now, if we talk about horizontal integration occurs when a firm integrates in the same industry and at the same stage of production. For instance, a car manufacturer with another car manufacturer. For instance, Toyota integrates with Honda, so that's car with car. So that's horizontal integration. The various advantages that a business can gain by horizontal integration. Let's take an example of mobile and Axion. So that's another business that integrated together. So what would be the advantage if these businesses integrates together? The first advantage would be they would gain economies of scale. The competition would start to decrease because two competitors, like for instance Coke and Pepsi, if they integrate together, so the competition starts to decrease. What would be another advantage of horizontal integration? There would be more finance available for these businesses, so they can operate on a larger scale. What would be another advantage if two competitor firm integrates together? They can become the market leader. What would be the drawback? There can be a drawback of horizontal integration. There would be two managers, maybe like duplication of designation. There would be like two managers, two directors. So probably we might need just one manager. So there might be some need for redundancy. And there can be another drawback. This can be, for instance, there can be differences in the corporate culture of both businesses. The way they operate, the way this business operates might be different. So their labor might have a conflict. Okay, if we move on towards vertical integration, what can be vertical integration? Vertical integration is divided into two: vertical backward integration, vertical forward integration. What is vertical backward integration? When a firm integrates in the same industry but at the previous stage of production. Vertical forward integration is when a firm integrates in the same industry but at the next stage of production. Now let's talk about vertical backward integration. Let's suppose if I am a furniture maker, what would be vertical backward integration? If I integrate with a wood supplier, that would be vertical backward integration. If I need wood to make my furniture, so if I integrate with the supplier, that's vertical backward integration. What would be vertical forward integration? If I'm a furniture manufacturer and I integrate with a sales outlet, that would be vertical forward integration. What would be the advantage of vertical backward integration? If, for example, I'm a furniture manufacturer and I integrate with a wood supplier, what would be the advantage? Supplies would be assured. They can be cheaper source of supplies. I can restrict my supplier not to supply to anyone else, and I can create a monopoly in that case. What can be the disadvantage of vertical backward integration? I don't have choice for supplier now because I've integrated with this supplier. Another drawback can be, for instance, if there was a damage or wastage by the supplier, it was I never paid for it. Now if we integrate together, the supplier and for example my business integrates together, the manufacturing business, his wastage and damage would also be my wastage and damage. Are we getting it? Because we are now one firm. So this would be another drawback. There would be another drawback of vertical backward integration. This would be that if there is a late delivery, let's suppose earlier there was late delivery and we used to impose financial penalty. If there's one day, let's suppose the supplier said he would deliver in 2 days time, and if he delivers in 3 days time, so there was a 3% deduction in the invoice, in the bill. Now we cannot do that because the supplier is our own business. Now we've integrated together. So there are both advantages and disadvantages of vertical backward integration. Vertical forward integration. What would be the advantage if I'm a furniture manufacturer and I integrate with a sales outlet? What would be the advantage? There would be assured sales. There would be direct contact with potential customers. The producer can have direct contact with potential customers. There would be no retailer margin needed for selling the product. Earlier, if I was producer and I used to give retailers certain amount of percentage from the sales, now I don't have to give them that particular percentage. So this is another advantage. What would be the drawback if there's a vertical forward integration? I probably might not have more choices to supply in different outlets. One drawback. Another drawback can be if there is a poor performance of the sales outlet, this can disturb my production as well. So that means there are both advantages and disadvantages. Now, if we talk about conglomerate integration. Now, what is conglomerate integration? When a firm integrates in an entire different industry, the stage of production might or might not be the same. For instance, let's suppose a car manufacturer integrating with a furniture manufacturer. They're nowhere connected, but they're integrating together. Are we getting it? So in this case, this is a conglomerate integration. The word conglomerate is also used for organizations that produces a diversified range of products. Let's take an example of Unilever. It produces soap, it produces shampoos, it produces ice cream, it produces tea, it produces so many things. So it's a huge conglomerate with diversified range of product. So conglomerate integration occurs when two firms that produces entirely different things integrates together. What can be advantage of conglomerate integration? There will be more finance available. There can be risk-bearing economies of scale. Risk-bearing economies of scale means that risk of failure can be diversified. If, for instance, one business is not performing well, let's suppose the furniture sales has dropped down, probably the car sales might have increased, so there is a diversification in the risk of failure. What disadvantage would we have if there is a conglomerate integration? Expertise of both the businesses are entirely different. It might be really difficult to create a synergy between both the firm. So generally, there are various advantages that we have for external growth. The business, can become a market leader in the industry. There are various drawbacks that it might be difficult to accommodate, both, the supplier and the producer together, or the sales outlet, or two businesses in the same industry or an entire different industry. However, if we are to conclude here, an external growth is a faster means of growth compared to internal growth, because two businesses integrates together and suddenly they start operating on a larger scale. This probably might take years or maybe might take a lot of time for the business to grow. Are we clear? Thank you very much.